The wizards in Lord of the Rings are seen as very powerful figures, and one wonders where they came from and how did their powers come to be. Also, were they just 3 wizards as seen in the movies, or more? And I'd like to answer these questions in this video. So the wizards, they first arrived in Middle-earth around 2000 years before the events of the films. And they were sent by the Valar, who were the gods in the Lord of the Rings mythos. And the reason they were sent was to oppose the rise of Sauron, who was seen as a great threat to Middle-earth. So there were actually 5 wizards that were sent, and each of them had a different name while they were still in the Undying Lands. For example, Gandalf was known as Olorin, Saruman as Kurumo, but I'll just refer to them with their normal names as I think it's easier to follow. So apart from Gandalf, Saruman and Radagast, there were another 2 wizards, known as the Blue Wizards, whose names were LOTR and Palando. So an interesting fact is that Gandalf at first was reluctant to go, because he feared Sauron and he saw himself as too weak to fight against him. But then Manwe, who was the Lord of the Gods of Sword, said that that's one of the reasons why he was going to be sent, in fact. Perhaps because his fear and caution towards Sauron would help him take the threat more seriously. So now, before the wizards left Middle-earth, they were given an instruction that they shouldn't match Sauron's power with power, and instead they must help the people of Middle-earth and guide them into opposing him and rallying enough force. And this is because the gods in Middle-earth didn't want the wizards to end up like Sauron, that they would dominate the people of Middle-earth and become a new evil leader. This was also why they were sent as frail old men, to have an aura of humility instead of strength or power. So they eventually departed to the Grey Havens, and when they arrived there, they were greeted by Círdan, who was the Lord of the Grey Havens. He was also one of the elves who had one of the 3 elven rings, the fire one in fact. And when he saw the wizards arrive, even though Saruman was their leader, he gave the ring to Gandalf because he deemed him to be the wisest of the 5. And this was the start of Saruman's jealousy towards Gandalf, because Saruman suffered a lot from pride and he saw himself as the greatest of them all, so he deserved the ring. In fact, maybe this is what caused Saruman's obsession with the rings, his desire for the One Ring, and he even had attempted to make his own powerful magical rings, as is mentioned in the books. So now, out of all these 5 wizards, it's sad to say that only one of them kept to his job, the duty he was given, and that's obviously Gandalf. Because Saruman, he kind of isolated himself and just went researching, and I think he cared more about his own power. He did not help the people of Middle-earth. Radagast became obsessed with the plants, trees and animals, went to Mirkwood and lived there for a while and took care of these, while the Blue Wizards are said to have gone to the east. It's believed that the Blue Wizards that were sent to the east had visited the lands of Rhûn and Khan, and these lands, their people, were seen in the movies actually, that they were aligned with Sauron. And thus people think that the wizards were sent there to stir up a rebellion of sorts and to aid those that still resisted and were against Sauron. In one of his letters, Tolkien actually mentions that he fears they might have failed their mission, and he thinks they might have actually started some of the magic cults that sprouted in the east. So out of all these 5, Gandalf was the only one who stuck to his role, as I mentioned, that he helped all the people. He'd go from place to place doing his best. He was quite famous for it, that everyone knew Mithrandir, Gandalf the Grey. And because of this, he was the only one that was allowed to return to Undying Lands once the war with Sauron was over. Because, in fact, Radagast just remained in Middle-earth in Mirkwood with the animals and plants. Saruman was killed, and his spirit, even though he attempted to return to Undying Lands, he wasn't allowed to, and thus he just roamed as a spirit in Middle-earth. While the fate of the Blue Wizards are unknown, but since it's presumed that they failed their mission, they too were not allowed to return. Apart from failing his mission because he didn't help the people of Middle-earth, Saruman had also failed it because he had actually tried to dominate them and gain power through the One Ring. I think this wraps up the video. I've covered their origins and their basic motives. If you disagree with me, would like to leave some advice, or have some questions, feel free to leave a comment below. As always, if you enjoyed this video, drop a like, and if you're interested, subscribe. Thanks as always.